Okay, you guys, so today we are going to do a lesson on, it's called How to Spy Out Your Promised Land. Basically, God's given you a promise, and so what we're going to do is we're going to spy out the land, and there's things that Moses instructed the people who went to go spy out the land to do when they were spying out the land. So these are going to be instructions on how to spy out the land that God has promised you, whatever your promise is that God has promised you. So we're going to be in Numbers 13, verses 1 through 2, and then again verses 17 through 25. So Numbers 13, 1 through 2, and Numbers 13, 17 through 25. All right, well, stay tuned for the lesson. All right, God bless. Peace. Okay, you guys, so here we are, and we're going to start right here in Numbers 13, verses 1 and 2. And it says, "And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Send men to spy out the land of Canaan, which I am giving the children of Israel. From each tribe of their fathers you shall send a man, every one a leader among them." Now, I don't know what it is that where God is taking you in your life. But as you see right here, God spoke to Moses. Moses, being a leader, he gave Moses the message to send out the people to spy out the land. Each of them individually spied out the land. So all of us in our life, we all have a different walk with Christ, and we all are to spy out our land. So God, it takes a leader from each tribe to go spy out the land, to get a report back. And so that's what we need to do when we're going into the promised land of where God is taking us. In order to get the next place, we must spy out the land. A lot of the time, we do this in life anyways. We go to websites to see what the pros and cons are of a product. When we're going into school, we see if like when you enroll into college, you go to see if they have your major, what kind of sports there are, what kind of rating the school is, what they do and do not have, what kind of visitation do they have, different things, that whatever it is that you're looking for in a school, you go and you pick it out and you weigh out the good or the bad. Also, what we also do is, sometimes we don't want to just jump into things because some of us have obligations that we have still in the place where we are. So we don't just jump right into the promised land of where we're going because our obligations are still, we still have things to work out in the place of where we are. And so I'll give you an example. My grandmother, for the past few years, at least once a week, she goes on the computer and she looks at houses in Arizona because that's God's promise to her. But she has obligations because she raises my brother. So until my brother graduates, she will not be moving. So she is placed right there. But God has allowed her to go out to Arizona to visit. And she looks at different details like, okay, what kind of area would she want to live in? And, what church is that? Is there a church close by for her to go to that suits, that's preaching the truth, that's preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ, that would be more family type for her. Things like that, we want to look, because we don't want to just jump into things without understanding what we're actually going up against. And so I'm going to post up the first few questions and then we're going to continue on with the lesson, all right? Okay, you guys, so you guys all know that I do interactive Bible study lessons. So this next part, there's going to be a lot of activity in this lesson, a lot of writing. So I encourage you guys to get a piece of paper and write down the things that it is that you guys are going to be looking for as you go to spy out your land. So now, when we start looking at Numbers 13, verses 17 through 20, we see all the things that Moses told the people, the spies who went to go spy out the land of Canaan, the promised land, what they needed to look for as they go into the land. It says, and then Moses sent them up to spy out the land of Canaan and said to them, go up this way into the south and go up to the mountains and see that the land, what the land is like, whether the people who dwell there in it are strong or weak, few or many, whether the land they dwell in is good or bad, whether the cities they inhabit are like camps or strongholds, whether the land is rich or poor, whether there are forests there or not. Be of good courage and bring some of the fruit of the land. Now it was the time. Now the time was the season of the first ripe grapes. So when you look here, the first thing that Moses instructs is he said, go up to the south, the way into the south, and go up to the mountains. When you look at this right here, we're not really climbing a mountain in our life. What we are doing is when we're looking into the place where God has told us is our promised land. Whatever God has promised to you, you look into it. But you want to look into the promised land or the situation that God is bringing you to, the next place in your life God is bringing you to, that he promised you to bring you to. You want to look from it from a view of a high view. And what I mean by this is a high view is sometimes God will use my little 3-year-old brother to teach me a lesson. For instance, the other day, my brother, I was watching TV. Actually, I was on my computer. I was typing up a lesson, and my brother was fiddling on the with the TV. And he never asked for help, and so I stopped there and I said, well, didn't you know that I was in the room? Do you need me to help you? And he said, okay, can you help me? So I went over to help him, and he kept trying to move me out of the way. Now, at this point, I looked at myself as me being God and him being a person, and basically saying that even though we're in the same room, and even though God's always there, we won't ask for help. And then when we ask for help, we try to intervene in what God's trying to do because we want to do it ourselves and not get the help that we need. And so basically that's what we need to do. We need to get a bird's eye view, look down into the situation so we can really reevaluate what is going on. So the reason why we have to do this is because although God is allowing us to have our promise, there can still be things in front of our promise that can hinder us from possessing what God has for us. So I'm going to post up some questions, and then the part right after these questions is going to be really interactive. All right, God bless you guys. Okay, you guys, so the next part you're going to have your pen and paper down. So basically, I'm going to try to explain this to my best ability. So basically, what you're going to do is when you're peering into the land, you're going to start looking for different things. Moses had asked them to look for certain things. He said, go see if the land is good or bad, or is there few issues or many, if there's camps or strongholds, the land is rich or poor, there's forests or not, all these things. So those are the things that we're going to be looking for. So, basically, this is what you're going to do. The first thing you're going to do is when you're peering into your situation, whether the issues are good or bad, you want to look at those issues. So, for example, say that your promise is that God is allowing you to court somebody. You're heading into marriage. You're heading to your spouse. So, basically, you're looking in at your spouse, and you are looking at, is this a good situation or is it a bad situation? What are you looking at when you're looking into the situation? Is there issues, few or many, their struggles that they struggle with? Many people, we all have different struggles. So basically, whatever your promise is, you want to figure out, what is the issue. If you look at my grandmother, when she went out to Arizona, she went out there. She had was looking for a church, but she came back. She wasn't able to find a church while she was out there. That could be an issue. So she has to go back out and go back and look for another church before she can move out there. So that would be, because depending on how many issues there are is how many, different things that you're going to have to face going into your promised land. So the next thing you do, so after you find out how many issues there are, you would write down whether they are bad or good situations. Okay? Then you would ask yourself, are these situations strong situations or are they weak? So figure out which situations are strong and how are they strong situations or how are they weak situations. Write down that, how they're weak and how are they strong. And for each situation you would write down whether they were a good or bad situation, whether they were weak or whether they were strong. So that would go into camps and strongholds, because depending on whether your situation is weak or strong is whether it's going to be a camp or a stronghold. Now when you look at a camp is live for a time. In a camp, it's a tent or camper, as when you would vacation on a place that is temporary for accommodation, and then after a while you move to the next place. A stronghold is a fortified defensive structure. So when you look at the situation, whether it is strong or weak, if it is a camp, then that means it is a weak situation, because camps would be like, for instance, if I had a issue that was weak, it would be a camp, because I would be able to deal with it really fast and then pick up and move on to the next situation. It's like if, you were trying to tell me, oh, can you empty out the trash, Now that I know to empty out the trash, now I can empty out the trash. That's simple, it's something that's very changeable. You can just say something about it and it can change really fast. And I can move on to the next place in my life. Camps are very temporary. They're weak because, there are things in our lives that are really quick fix that we can pick up and move on to the next place in our life, so we're not stuck in the same place in our life for too long. But when you're looking at strongholds, strongholds are strong, fortified, defensive structures. There are things in our lives that can weigh us down and hold us back from moving forward to the next place in our lives. So we want to make sure if whatever the situation is, whether good or bad, if it's strong, we have to make sure that it's something that we can handle, because a stronghold can keep us stuck for a long time. I told you, for me, when I'll use myself as an example. For me, I had an issue where I couldn't move forward in my life with getting into relationships, because there was something deep rooted down in me from my past lifestyle that was hindering me. So God had I was rooted down. I could not move forward in my life where God was trying to take me, because it was so deep rooted down in me. Fear controlled my life. I could not move forward. So I had a defense system up. Every time someone would say something to me about being in a relationship, I was very bitter and I was very angry. But see that is a stronghold. So we have to be, there's things in our promised land that could keep us in the same place for too long. So we want to make sure that we look out for strongholds in our lives, things, wherever it is that God's taking us, because we want to make sure that these are, they're places that are temporary. They're easy fix situations that we can keep moving, because the longer and the more deep rooted something is down, it's going to be a little more difficult to fight. So whatever issue it is in your promised land that might have a stronghold, it's going to be a little harder to face, rather than something that is a camp that is just temporary. So another place that Moses had told them was to see if there's any forest, because when you think about people and forests. We don't want to get lost in the forest. Being lost in the forest represents being unable to find the way. They just got out of the wilderness. We do not want to go to a place where we cannot find our way. It just reminds you of a lost person who is unable to identify. We don't want to get there and be unable to identify on what's going on with our current location, not being effective in any kind of way, not even knowing where we're going because we're lost in the forest. We don't want to be lost in the forest. So I'm going to put up the next question, and then we're going to move on to the next place. I hope I explained that to you guys, and I'm going to put up all the different questions that you guys are going to want to look out for, and then we'll move on. All right. God bless. All right, you guys. So this is actually the last few things that you're gonna need to do when you go to spy out your land. So you're gonna look at verses 21 through 25. So it says right here, basically when they go into the wilderness, and then after that they went through the south, and they saw the descendants of Anak, who were giants, as well as they went through a valley, and when they got to the valley, they cut down a branch with one cluster of grapes. And they carried it between two people on a pole. And they brought pomegranates and figs. The place was the valley of Eshcol, because of the cluster which the men of Israel cut down there. And they returned from spying out the land after 40 days. So basically, you're going to return after you spy out your land. But there's three things that the people had to face. or three things that you can face when you go into your promised land. Here they say they went into the wilderness. The children of Israel had just left the wilderness. Now, when you go into your promised land, you do not want to go up against another wilderness, a wilderness place or places in our lives when we're trying to get right with God. These are the places where God is trying to transform us because there's things in us that we need to get rid of. Like when we look at the children of Israel when they were just coming out the wilderness, the reason they were in the wilderness so long is because they were complaining. And so that was a time and a place in that land where they needed to learn how to be content. And so God was just fixing them up and transforming them in that wilderness place in their life. So we want to make sure that we don't go back into the wilderness. Because we can get to our promised land and end up right back in a different wilderness time in our life. Also, there was another place where they end up passing through, and when they got there, in the south, they ran into giants. Now, if there are giants in the land, and trust me, there will be giants in their land. If you say that you have strongholds, issues in your land, there will be a giant. With a stronghold, there will be a giant, because giants are situations in our lives that we feel that we cannot get over them because they're so big, issues that are so strong in our lives. I just can't do this. I don't know if I can make it. I don't know if we can defeat this issue, this problem, this situation, whatever it is, that is a giant. So you want to make sure that when you get there that you see if there's giants in the land. And trust me, there will be wildernesses in the land, and there will be giants in the land, but you got to make sure. You have to make sure that you don't stay there for too long. Another thing, it said that there would be a valley. Valleys are low places in our life. I just did a lesson on that, facing the giants in our lives when it comes to the valleys. Now, once you do this lesson, you might want to check out the facing the giants when it comes to dead situations in your life, because you're facing giants. And it talks about how we sometimes can go into the valley. I will probably do a lesson on wilderness moments in our lives. But when you think about the valley, it's a low place in our life, where we get to this very low place because we've lost the battle in our life, and so. But the thing about this valley, when they talk about this valley, is not like any other valley. When I was looking at this valley, had fruit in it. So even though we might come to this valley in our life when it comes to going into the promised land, it's a low place in our life, but this one will have fruit. So that means we're able to push forward. We're reaping what we've sowed, and what we've been looking for so long. So even though we may fail and we're in a low place, we're still going to find some fruit in this valley this time when we go to the promised land. And as it says, they returned back. They returned back to where they originally were after spying out their land. So I just encourage you guys to do the questions. But there's one more thing I want to say to you guys. See, the fruit in this land was ripe. Now, if the fruit is not ripe in your land, I'm telling you, you do not want to get something before it's time. When you think about fruit, fruit, when you get it out of season, is bitter. It doesn't taste good. So if your fruit in your promised land is bitter, no, it's not for you. You're in the wrong season. Wait for it to ripen. Wait for it to ripen, so then you can get but it has to be in due season. Do not take things into your own hands. But the Bible says right here in Galatians 6:9, and let us not be weary in well doing, for in due season we shall reap. We shall reap if we faint not. I'm going to say that again. And let us not be weary in well doing. So continue fighting the good fight, for in due season, when your fruit is ripe, you will reap. You will reap. So do not give up, but do not take things into your own hands, because I'm telling you, it will not leave a good taste in your mouth. You won't be happy at all about it. And so if you look again, where it talks about this, it talks about how they came back with figs and pomegranates. Now, pomegranates have a lot of seeds, but see, they came back with grapes because the grapes were ripe and in season. Pomegranates have a lot of seeds in them. Maybe your promised land is a place where you are planting seeds. Where the next place that God's taking you, you're planting seeds. It or maybe you're in the place where, and this says they came back with figs. Now, if you remember in the Bible, there was a story in the Bible of Jesus and how he had cursed the fig tree because it had the leaves around it, but there was no fruit. And so that's why I said do not take things into your own hands, because you could be in the wrong season, or there could not be any fruit behind your leaves of your fig tree. But it says right here, depending on where you are in your life, you could be in going into a place where you're spying out the land and your grapes are ripe. This is your season to get what you are going for. This could be your season to plant seeds, or right now you're in a place where you have no fruit, so you want to get to a place where you do have fruit, because you could just have leaves and nothing underneath the leaves, and God still needs to work on you. That's where you talk about like the wilderness times in our lives. God could be building you up still. And so I love you guys, and here are the next questions for you guys. But I just want to thank you guys for taking the time to do these lessons. If there's an issue on doing this lesson because it seems a little difficult the way I explained it, please let me know so that I can make some changes to the video. I love you guys so much, and God bless. Peace.